I was stunned when I heard those words denying my request for paid leave. It seemed like a constant challenge from my superior. Despite my frustration, I decided not to return. My breaking point had been reached. As I questioned her certainty, she appeared taken aback, her eyes widening in surprise. My name is Nancy, and I recently turned 28. I dedicated a decade to the Candle Corporation, earning the status of an experienced employee at a relatively young age. Although my family wasn't affluent, my parents took great care of me as their only child. I seldom received new possessions, often relying on hand-me-downs from cousins or neighbors. Despite the scarcity of new outfits, I remained content, surrounded by love from neighbors and relatives. Growing up, I cherished memories of weekend picnics in local parks with my parents. Although I had close ties with my cousins, the sense of love and support persisted. As I entered 12th grade, I assumed the role of the student council president, maintaining excellent grades. Despite a scholarship offer for college, I declined, expressing my desire to work as a public servant. Despite my parents' attempts to sway me, I chose a different path, aiming to alleviate any financial burden on them as soon as possible. However, my life took an unexpected turn when my father was diagnosed with a severe illness and eventually passed away, leaving me unable to repay his kindness. In the absence of my father, I took on the responsibility of caring for my mother and continued to reside with her amidst the hustle and bustle of daily life. Time passed swiftly as I navigated the various facets of working life. After 5 years, I had established myself as a respected figure in the office, leading a comfortable life. I was entrusted with training newcomers and occasionally acting on behalf of my boss. The bonuses were substantial, allowing me to contribute around $600 monthly to support my parents. In my personal life, I enjoyed outings with friends, colleagues, and my boyfriend. However, a shift occurred when our manager was transferred, and a new manager, rumored to be the president's daughter, took charge. Speculation suggested she had been enjoying a life of leisure, relying on her father's wealth. The president, unwilling to stand by and watch, decided to impart some life lessons by placing her in a responsible position. Only the president and I were privy to this information. Despite her privileged background, many in the company, aware that she lacked real-world experience and was hired due to her connections, viewed her with skepticism. The work environment grew tense, and the atmosphere became increasingly stifling. Little did I anticipate that the trouble would eventually find its way to me, and it did when I made her a cup of hot coffee upon her request. Is this some kind of attempt to irritate me? I prepared it exactly as you instructed. I replied calmly as she glared at me. In response, she angrily threw the hot coffee in my direction, and I couldn't avoid it. Wincing in pain, I held my right arm, now splashed with coffee, and shot a defiant glare back at her. "How is this according to my instructions?" she retorted. "I asked for it warm with extra milk and sugar." "I made it warm with 2 glasses of milk and 2 scoops of sugar." I defended myself. However, she insisted. "It's too hot, and it's common sense to take 4 glasses of milk and 3 scoops of sugar." Once again, she asserted her own version of common sense onto others. Apologizing, I offered to make another cup right away. But she continued to criticize, expressing her disdain for those without higher education. "This is why I don't like high school grads. I heard from my father that you're competent and trusted by everyone." "I have much to learn," she condescendingly remarked. As she continued with her snide remarks, the pain in my burned arm intensified. I resisted the urge to cool it, looking forward to meeting her after my father spoke so highly of her. However, she turned out to be a disappointment. Ignoring her hurtful words, I pondered on how to resolve the situation. Despite a nearby employee attempting to intervene, I signaled that I was okay, not wanting to become the next target of her harassment. Employees targeted by her in the past had been mentally driven into resigning voluntarily. As I considered my options, she forcibly grabbed my burned arm and squeezed the injured area tightly. "You've got guts to ignore me. Don't think you'll get away with this." I winced in pain as she released my arm, seemingly satisfied with my reaction. She ordered me to make coffee again, and I quickly excused myself, rushing to the pantry to cool the affected area. The incident left a lasting mark despite my immediate visit to a dermatologist and the prescribed ointment. To conceal it, I dressed in a way that hid the injury, avoiding unnecessary concern from my colleagues. From that day on, the harassment from her only intensified. During one instance, she criticized a document, throwing it at me with a red pen, pointing out mistakes. Frustrated, I sighed at her immature behavior. When I inquired about the issues in the document, she dismissed my questions, insisting that it needed to be redone due to its inadequacies. As a manager, I had been assigning tasks to her, drawing from my experience with new employees, but nothing seemed to get through to her. Her arrogance and refusal to accept mistakes frustrated me. She asserted her authority, declaring that as the manager, she shouldn't have to deal with such matters. Moreover, she took a personal jab, insinuating that I was desperate to be liked by her father, the president. Mocking my family background, she brought up the fact that I came from a fabulous family. I was taken aback, as I had never discussed my family with her before. Attempting to steer the conversation back to work, I suggested we focus on relevant topics. However, she continued to taunt me, implying that my father's lack of reward for hard work and subsequent illness were somehow my fault. Growing increasingly irritated, I couldn't contain my frustration when she made disparaging remarks about my parents. She found amusement in my anger, mocking my reaction, and claiming that her own parents were wonderful and respectable. Unable to tolerate the disrespectful behavior any longer, I asserted that she, knowing nothing about my family, had no right to pass judgment. She quickly responded to the slight drop in my voice tone, revealing her true nature. "So that's your attitude, huh? Is it okay to have that attitude with the president's daughter?" She threatened to report my behavior to her father and painted a narrative of being mistreated by me. Undeterred, I invited her to feel free to do so, calmly instructing her to correct the test document properly and submit it by the end of the day. I made it clear that I wouldn't be intimidated and was determined to carry on with my work. As I turned my back on her, she whispered a threat in a voice only I could hear, but I chose to ignore it and return to my seat. Despite her continued sarcasm, I managed to make her learn the basics, addressing even minor aspects like detailed computer operations and types of documents. It was a challenging road ahead, but I persisted in my efforts. During a break, I sat on a bench on the office rooftop, sipping Kent coffee to soothe my exhausted body. While contemplating my future, I unexpectedly received a call from an unknown number on my smartphone. The voice on the other end identified themselves as someone from the Savy Hospital, informing me that my mother had been urgently transported there in critical condition. My mind went blank, and I couldn't recall much afterward. Leaving an early leave notice on her desk, I caught a taxi to the hospital. Upon arrival, I explained the situation at the reception, and the nurse guided me to where my mother was. Seeing her lying there, peaceful but critical, I was overcome with disbelief and grief. According to the doctor, my mother had collapsed at her workplace, and I tried to comprehend the gravity of the situation as I sat by her side in the hospital room. In the midst of the difficult situation, we clung to the hope of miracles. My mother's heart had not been robust, but the symptoms had been stable, and regular checkups revealed no issues. Yet, the mental strain following my father's passing might have taken its toll. At times, I found myself sobbing, tightly embracing my mother, grappling with the uncertainty of the situation. After bringing my mother home, the funeral date was set, and amidst the arrangements, I gathered the strength to call the female manager to request my first ever paid leave. Despite explaining the emergency with my mother's passing, her response was unexpectedly cold and harsh. She refused to approve any paid leave, leaving me in disbelief. In the 10 years I had been with the company, I had never taken a day of paid leave, contributing significantly to its success. The denial of this request, especially during such a crucial time, pushed me to my breaking point. Without hesitation, I cut the call, deciding not to return to such a toxic environment. The funeral proceeded smoothly, and I kept myself busy with various tasks and expressions of gratitude to those who had offered kindness. Despite multiple attempts by the female manager to reach out, I chose to ignore every call. 2 weeks later, I received a call from the president, prompting me to return to the office. Walking straight to the president's office, I encountered two sympathetic coworkers who offered their condolences. Grateful for their kindness, I expressed my intention to visit the president first. Upon entering the president's office, I apologized for the 2-week absence. Without sugarcoating anything, I laid out the harsh treatment I and other employees had endured from his daughter. I could sense the weight of the negative information about his own daughter impacting him. The president listened attentively to every word I said, offering a sincere apology for his daughter's actions. He acknowledged that he and his wife had spoiled her, resulting in the current situation. Seeing my awkwardness, the president smiled gently, expressing understanding as a parent. Despite my own struggles, he complimented me, calling me a wonderful lady. The president admitted his error in judgment regarding his daughter and informed me that he had spoken to those who had resigned in the past 2 weeks. He apologized for the chaos and revealed that since I stopped coming to the department, things had gone haywire. He shared that the entire team had recently staged a group protest, and he seemed genuinely troubled by the situation. I was taken aback when the president asked for my help. He explained that it was easy for him to have his daughter resign, but that alone wouldn't satisfy all the employees. He sought my assistance in resolving the matter, and after looking into the president's earnest eyes, I made up my mind to help. The sanctions against her began, marking the start of a process aimed at rectifying the situation. However, the exasperated female manager reached out, questioning the duration of my time off and urging me to return to the office. Reluctantly, I changed into my work clothes and headed to the office. To my surprise, the office was eerily quiet, devoid of any employees. It felt strange for a weekday, and as I mumbled to myself about the oddity of the situation, I heard yelling from a woman in my department. Peeking cautiously inside, I found her causing a disturbance. Confused, I asked what was going on, and she swiftly turned her attention to me, blaming me for everyone else's absence. I calmly responded, asking her not to shift the blame. She let me go but pushed me away, expressing her frustration and helplessness. It was evident that the situation had taken a toll on her. Her appearance was disheveled, with messy hair and chipped nail polish that she had ignored despite numerous reminders. The former female manager's downfall unfolded as she faced the consequences of her actions. In her disheveled state, with phrases here and there on her jacket, she looked nothing like the queen-like figure she once portrayed. Laughing at her predicament, I confronted her about her misuse of power and lack of real skills. Angered, she threatened to ban me from the company, but I countered with the suggestion that I'd stay if she resigned. Unfazed, she fired me, claiming she would take over the company. Despite her threats, I accepted the situation, bidding her farewell. However, my unexpected reaction seemed to catch her off guard. When she questioned if I realized I was fired, I calmly acknowledged it and began packing my things. As I made my way to my desk, she followed, desperate to salvage the situation. In a surprising turn, I educated her on the illegality of rejecting a justified paid leave request without a valid reason, highlighting the violation of labor laws. Her face turned ashen, realizing the gravity of the situation. I continued, emphasizing the importance of treating people with respect, regardless of differences. She tried to shift the blame, but I stood my ground, asserting her unfitness as a manager. As she shook with rage, our exchange escalated, with both of us throwing insults. The president intervened, revealing evidence of her deeds and dismissing her justifications. He expressed disappointment in her incompetence and the decline in performance under her lead. Despite her pleas, the president decided to transfer her to a rural town for reform. The former female manager's journey to redemption began, marked by a change in attitude and receptiveness to feedback. Despite an apology call, I declined her request to return. Meanwhile, the president personally invited those who had resigned to return, restoring peace and smiles to the workplace. I stepped into the vacant managerial role, overwhelmed but well supported by the employees. Compensation from the former female manager's salary, coupled with a settlement, brought comfort. Life took a positive turn as my boyfriend proposed, and we eagerly awaited the arrival of our child in the coming year. Despite the challenges, I embraced the new chapter in my life with gratitude and anticipation.